All right, we're getting serious.
Burn my finger!
We're getting serious this week on Short Riff Studios. We've got the Prox on. We're going to cut some foam, ladies and gentlemen.
And it's Pink Panther foam, so it's not that cheap stuff that you get upstairs when you don't pay for the right insulation in your house.
Sure. All right, so this week, yes, we're going to cut some pink foam. So if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, we're going to make some dungeon tiles, and there are a million videos out there about dungeon tiles. So I'm not necessarily going to go through the whole process. I mean, you'll get to see it. But we're not necessarily going to give you a tutorial of the whole process. But one of the things that I like to do, that I kind of want to share with you how I do it, just because a lot of people do it a lot of different ways, is magnetizing these. So putting magnets in them. So these are some of my dungeon tiles that I made, and each side has a magnet in it. And it's nice because, look, they won't go together. But if I turn it that way, they go together. I mean, you can't pick them up and carry them around really, but you can slide around on your table, or if you got a mat, they're not going to come apart. I like to have them magnetized. So I'm going to show you how I do that. And you'll get to see kind of the whole process, and that's why I have the Prox on out today, because I'm going to cut some foam and make some tile. Okay. All right, so we've cut out some foam squares. I'm just going to deal with one of these because I'm just going to show you how to do one. So the first thing we got to do is our grid. Okay. So here's the thing I did. There's a couple of things you can do. If you're really confident that you got your squares perfectly square, you can cut a grid on the Prox sign. You just set your fence at 1 inch. If you're doing a 1 inch grid, just set it at 1 inch from center, and then you can basically just sort of slide it into the wire and cut like an 1/8 inch deep groove, pull it back, turn it, do that same thing on each side, and then you'll have a grid, a perfect grid. I actually like the look of a more hand-drawn grid myself, so that's how I'm going to do it. So what I've done is I went to Hobby Lobby. I'm sure you can go to any craft store or fabric store. This is some kind of sewing template. I don't know, it was in the sewing department. It's a thin sheet of plastic. It's got a 1 inch grid on it. And I bought this sheet because I want to do different sizes of the tiles, but I basically just cut out a 3x3 square from that template with a 3x3 grid in it. And I've cut notches at the points where my 1 inch grid lines would go on my tile. Okay. And so that allows me to make a little mark right at the end around each side. So what I do is I just line this guy up on here. I take my pen and I make a mark at each notch. Okay. So now I've got that. That may seem like an extra step, making those marks, but it really does help me. I like to be sure. So I've got this nice little ruler with the cork backing on it. I know Jeremy from Black Magic Craft doesn't like these so much. He likes to use his square for this, which I get, but I have a really hard time on this thin piece of foam getting that square to sit right so that I can draw a straight line. So I just line up my ruler, line up my straight edge with the marks on opposing ends, and I'm just gonna. You can do it this way. You can draw a line with a pen, or if you're brave, all I'm gonna do is turn it this way so I can be on the left side of those marks, or put ruler on the right side. Or if you're brave, just go ahead and get your knife. Because basically drawing the lines with a pen is an extra step. So hold your blade level, don't push it in too deep, and just basically score along those marks. And that's typically what I do. I don't do the pen because I'm gonna have to go back and draw with a pen again here in a moment. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that here. Okay. And So basically I just go all the way around. And just make sure that you stay on your straight edge. And I know this looks backwards to everybody because I'm left-handed, but just make sure you stay on that straight edge, because if you come off of it, you will wind up with a line where you don't want it, and it's impossible to fix it. So now that looks off probably to you because I drew in one pen line, and the rest aren't drawn in yet. But now I'm going to take a ballpoint pen, or you can use a pencil, or you can use something else if you want, and just basically all I'm doing is creating a beveled edge by running it through that groove that I just cut with the knife. And this is, I said I wasn't going to do a tutorial of all this stuff, but this is pretty basic stuff. This is how most people do these things. So now I like, in addition to putting the magnets in, I like for the sides to look finished like stone, I like the top of it. So what I'm going to do, I just kind of freehand this. I go from the ends of these lines, and I just draw a line straight down the side as best I can, so they're never straight. So it just looks like it's a really crooked line. Okay, and that's fine because I want it to look like it's made out of, rough hewn stone. If I were doing something where I was concerned about it looking perfect, I would do it a different way. But in this case, I want that rough look. Now keep in mind that you're drawing this with a pen, but the point is not to draw a line. The point is to put a groove in the foam, because that's how it's going to show up after you paint it, right? If you just draw a line, once you paint it, you're not going to see that line. All right, so there's that. Now there are other things that you do here. You take some aluminum foil and ball it up, and kind of roll it around there and make some marks and distress it that way, which is something I do. You'll also kind of take an X-Acto knife or something and kind of chip off edges and just make it look distressed. I'm not going to do all that right now because you can find lots of other places to see how to do that stuff. What I'm going to show you now is how I put the magnets in, and I had to do all of this so I could put the magnets in. All right, so here we are. We put our grid on. The next step is going to be, so I have these ordered for really cheap on Amazon, these 6x2mm neodymium magnets. They're teeny tiny little magnets. Pretty strong, not overly strong. You don't need super strong magnets because, honestly, you're not trying to create a huge magnetic field here. You're just trying to get these things to keep them sliding around and stay together the way you want them to. So there's a couple of tricks here. I have the magnets, and then I have a 7/32 drill bit with a sharp tip, okay? And that's really just so I can stick it in the foam and tear out a hole. You can try it with the drill. It's probably gonna be a bit of overkill. You can see that I put a little piece of orange tape on here, and that's a depth gauge. And I'll go a little bit past the end of that. I've sort of figured that out over time. For the depth of these magnets. So a couple of things. You're going to put a hole here, and you want to try to center it as best you can. And that's one reason why it's nice to have that pointy tip, because you can kind of make a little point, make a little dot, and check it. If you want to get real precise with it, if you want to measure the exact center, you can do that. I don't do it. It turns out pretty good most of the time. Every once in a while, I have one that I have to, get rid of or something, but usually it works out fine. I just eyeball it, but I take my time, and try to get it as close to the center as possible. As long as they're pretty close to the same place, you can put them together and they'll stick together. They'll hold together just fine in the way that they should. So you want to make sure that that's as close to the center, and that's the reason why I went ahead and did the grid lines first. Okay, because that helps me to figure out where that center is. And the other thing is, you want to go a little bit, like these are pretty thin magnets. You can go too deep with these, okay? Like what looks like it would be too deep. Because you're going to put, first of all, you're going to put a lot of hot glue in there to hold it in. And second of all, it's okay if they sit below the surface of the edge of that foam. If they sit lower than the edge of that foam, that's okay. The magnets don't actually have to touch each other to attract each other, right? Because you're going to have two tiles with magnets in them, okay? The other thing to remember is you've got to alternate the poles of these magnets, right? If you just take these magnets, like they all stick together like this, right? They all hold together just like this. If you just take them in and you stick them in these the same, turned the same way, you're going to have, all your tiles are going to repel each other, right? Because that's how magnets work. You get a north pole and a south pole, and so you basically have to take them and alternate north, south, and then you'll take two tiles and you may have two sides that repel each other. But if you turn one of them, then they hold together. So those are the things that you have to remember. So first, I got my magnets here, I got my drill bits. So I'm gonna just kind of carefully eyeball this. And you want to get it in the center vertically and horizontally. And just shove it in there and turn it. And I usually wind up having to turn it to the left to get a cleaner hole. And you just kind of fish out your little bits of foam. And it's not a super clean hole, but it doesn't have to be. You're going to do a lot of stuff to this thing, so it's going to be okay. That's one thing to keep in mind with these. Like, if you have something that looks a little rough, it's probably okay because you're going to texture it and distress the tar out of it, and it's going to look great. All that stuff is going to make it look better. So I'm just going to do that same thing on all four sides. Right in the center. And I've just found that most of the time if I turn it to the right, which is the way, typically your drill bit would go, it tears out too much foam. It makes the hole too big. If I turn it to the left, it seems to be a little bit cleaner hole. And you can find lots of ways to do this. I'm sure a lot of people would do this with their glue gun. They'll use the nozzle of the glue gun to basically melt a hole. My problem with that is I feel like you need to go a bit deep because you want to have plenty of hot glue to hold that magnet in. Because there will be forces pulling against the glue, right? That's how magnets work. So, so you want to go a little bit deep with the hole. And if you try to do that with the nozzle of your glue gun, you may wind up with a hole that's much wider because the nozzle is cone-shaped, not a hole that's much wider than you want it to be. All right, so I'm just going to push that stuff out of the way. All right, so, and again, they don't have to be super clean, but I do want to make sure there's not a lot of just excess bits of foam sitting on the bottom when I put the glue in, because then that's just something else that can come out and cause the magnet not to stay in the way I want it to. Should be on right now. Okay, so I got my glue gun. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit fun. Actually, you know what? I need some tweezers. Actually, no, I don't. So, if you find a good way to do this, you let me know, all right? So, so it doesn't matter the actual pole of the magnet that you leave exposed. Okay, it doesn't matter. As long as you alternate them, it'll be fine. And as long as you alternate them on every tile you make, it'll be fine. It doesn't matter if it's actually the north or south that's exposed on any given side. So basically what I do when I do these, I did at one point, I did actually try to make them always north-south, like I knew exactly which pole it was. I had an app on my phone that you can hold up to and it'll tell you which magnet pole you're facing. But I don't do that anymore. So I just assume that whatever one is sticking out here is north, and I alternate from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a good amount of glue, and I mean I'm just about going to fill it all the way up to the top. Not quite fill up that hole, because I want to have some room. I'm going to get that excess off of there. I love those spider webs, right? So you're going to get I'm going to take my magnet off, and I'm just going to make sure that the face that was on the outside there is still facing out when I put it in the hole, okay? If you're not sure, then just take the magnet away, stick it back on the stack of magnets, and do it again so you can be sure. And I'm going to push it down in there because I want it to get down in that glue. You know, hot glue is going to cool pretty quick, so I got one in here. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but the next time when I put that magnet in, I'm actually going to flip it over so that the other side is exposed. And that's just how I do these, okay? Okay, fill up that hole. Grab one of these magnets. I did do these with tweezers at one time. Actually, something that works really well is, that's what I forgot to do. So something that works really well is to take a Q-tip and put some poster putty on the end of that Q-tip, tacky, whatever you want to call it, and use that to pick up your magnets. Like you can lay them out and you can use that to pick them up. Eventually the tacky wears off or your Q-tip gets glue all over it. All right, so we're going to do, this one's going to be north. So we've done north and the south, and this one's going to be north. So this one, we'll grab it off the end of the stack, and we just want to make sure that the same side is facing out, and we've got a spider web there. That's my favorite thing about hot glue. And that's one thing I will tell you. You make these, you don't want to leave those little bits of glue sticking out right there, because that to me is obvious when you paint it. Like you can still see that. So you may have to come back later with an X-Acto or something and fix that. So if there's a little bit of glue that comes out on top of the magnet, I just kind of smooth it out with my finger because it's cool enough at this point I can touch it, but it's still soft. So I'm going north, and so this one's going to be south. So another spider web. Okay, make sure flip this guy over. You are going to make a mess, so you know, it is what it is. All right, so this one has got magnets in it. Now, I typically will not, I would try to, if I'm doing a bunch of these at one time, which typically you're not going to be making one like this, I wouldn't put a bunch of them with magnets in them right next to each other because they're not done yet. You want to make sure that the glue has plenty of time to cool and set, but also, you know, when you paint these, the first thing that you're probably going to do is put a coat of Mod Podge and black craft paint on them. And Mod Podge is, of course, also glue, and it creates a nice shell on the outside of this thing. So essentially, you've got hot glue underneath the magnet, and then you've got a layer of PVA glue and shellac or whatever the heck is in that Mod Podge on top of it. And so it tends to hold them in pretty well. Typically, when I store them, I kind of stack them this way, so I try not to put too many of them side by side, just to preserve the life of the magnets a little bit. Sometimes they do pull out, and if they do, you can always glue them back in. I mean, you can clean the excess foam and glue off of the magnet, and you can glue it right back in. I tried a couple of different kinds of glue. I've tried using the Mod Podge inside there. I've tried, you know, Elmer's glue. I've tried tacky glue. The hot glue really is the option that seems to work the best because it dries fast, it cures fast and hardens. Do not use super glue, okay? If you don't know, standard super glue or CA glue is actually corrosive to this foam. It will eat the foam right up, so don't, it'll completely defeat the purpose to use super glue. They do make foam safe super glue. I haven't tried to use it. You want to try it? Give it a shot. Super glue, I don't think doesn't tend to work as well on magnets on these smooth metal surfaces, so you may need to score the surface of the magnet or something first. But for my money, the hot glue works pretty well, and these magnets are cheap, and the foam's pretty cheap. It's actually cheaper right now than it was when I bought this sheet of foam, so maybe you should go out and get some now. That's how you do it. Now you're gonna, you know, texture it, and you're gonna paint it up, and it's gonna look great. All right, well, there you have it. There's how I do magnetic dungeon tiles. If you want to learn how to actually do dungeon tiles from scratch, basically, the model that I use is Black Magic Crafts video. I learned how to do it from his videos. The magnets are that's kind of my way of doing magnets. A lot of different people do them different ways. This is the way I like to do them. So Now, before you, another crafting project that Scott and I have been working on is a, a Halloween diorama.
Right.
It's a little after Halloween now, but
It's my fault.
so Scott has some models that he printed, and he's working on painting. And we decided to create this little landscape for him. Just kind of created a little graveyard. We've got some coffins that are going to go in these graves. And a mini here that goes here. There's like some zombies and this crazy like zombie girl with like swirly magic stuff, and there's a tree that goes right there.
There's a tree, yeah.
that goes right there.
Well, some headstones, a few headstones.
Oh,
too.
headstones that go at the tops of these graves.
Yeah.
This isn't quite done either. It's like 98% done.
Which is better than mine. I'm like 5% done.
But we thought we'd give you guys a look at it just so you can see when that's coming up, because I know Scott mentioned it in a recent video. So be on the lookout for that, as well as our playthrough of the Dungeon in a Box adventure that we reviewed recently as well. So thanks for joining us again this week on Short Wrist Studio. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name.
It's
of the
Short
channel.
Studio Resting.
Thanks for joining us again this week on Short Rest Studios. Keep an eye out for the Halloween diorama coming sometime in January. I don't know.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, right.
Halloween 2023.
Yes. We'll revisit it next Halloween. But hey, if you like this kind of content, please take a moment and like and subscribe to our channel. Leave us a comment. Let us know what kind of content you want to see on here, and we'd love to make some more for you. We'll see you next time on Short Rest Studios.